Hello, this is JoLaine Minor with the Office of Community Development. I am here to discuss labor standards. I wanted to share a construction joke with you today that I've been working on, but I still have to hammer out a few kinks and nail the ending. I have a good foundation, I just don't want to screw it up with the delivery. I'll keep you apprised of its development. With that, we'll move on. Any CDBG funded construction contract over $2,000 is subject to federal labor standards. You must assign someone the responsibility for assuring compliance. This is typically the grant administrator. The federal labor standards are the Copeland Anti-Kickback Act, the Contract Hours and Safety Standards Act, and the Davis-Bacon Prevailing Wage Act. The Copeland Anti-Kickback Act prohibits employers from forcing employees to give up any part of their wages except for authorized payroll deductions. The Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act. This act applies to any contract exceeding $100,000. It requires laborers and mechanics to be paid time and 1/2 for hours worked over 40 hours in one work week. It also assures that no laborer or mechanic be made to work in surroundings that are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous. Okay, that brings us to the Davis-Bacon Prevailing Wage Act. Davis-Bacon requires laborers and mechanics to be paid at least once per week. The term laborer or mechanic is used for anyone performing construction on a project. All laborers and mechanics must be paid for the prevailing wage for the work they are performing. This means that even if they are a plumber by trade, but they are laying pipes for the project, they should get the laborer rates, not the plumber rates. Only apprentices and trainees registered with the U.S. Department of Labor may be paid less than the federal prevailing wage. Foremen and supervisors are covered by Davis-Bacon if they are performing manual work more than 20% of the workday. Exclusions apply to project superintendents, administrative staff, executives, and clerical staff. Volunteers and force account labor workers are exempt from Davis-Bacon. Next, we will discuss the bidding process. All construction projects must go through a formal bidding process. Contracts over $250,000 must be competitively bid. All projects subject to Davis-Bacon must be competitively bid, even if a construction contract is $250,000 or less and is part of a federally funded project subject to Davis-Bacon. The small purchase procedure may not be used. Bid packets are prepared by the engineer and must include the federal prevailing wage rates. You must advertise your project in a newspaper with broad circulation or on a construction project website. You must also complete the MBE notice and post it at the city or village hall and the regional PTAC center. A copy must also be sent to daryl.thomas@illinois.gov. Bids are to be publicly opened on the date advertised, and you must choose the lowest responsible bidder per 2 CFR 200. You must check for debarment at www.beta.sam.gov. For prime contractors, verification of registration and contractor eligibility is required. For subcontractors, verification of contractor eligibility is required. You must check the name of the contracting firm, the name of the president, and the owner of the firm. The No Active Exclusions field on the Entity Summary screen is where it indicates debarment. Yes means that the contractor is debarred. If it indicates that no record is found, then the entity is not registered or has let its registration lapse. Again, a contract shall not be awarded until the contractor is verified, registered, and active. Okay, awarding the contract. You must submit the HUD 2516 or the Notice of Contract Award within 10 days of the contract being awarded. You must include the sam.gov search results, and please include a copy of the bid tabulation to verify that the lowest responsible bidder was chosen per 2 CFR 200. The federal prevailing wage rates must be included in all bid and contract documents. The Davis-Bacon provisions must be included in all contract documents, including those of subcontractors. Okay, now we'll move on to prevailing wage rates. To obtain the prevailing wage rates, the prevailing wage rates should be the most current available. A lot of you have been around for a very long time, where you used to submit requests or obtain your own prevailing wage rates at 30 days prior to or 10 days prior to your contract activity dates. That is no longer the case. Prevailing wage rates should be the most current available, and you must go through the Labor Standards Officer to receive the prevailing wage rates for your project. The initial request needs to be submitted a minimum of 5 days prior to the bid advertisement. You need to check for updates a minimum of 5 days prior to bid opening. Contract award, if not awarded within 90 days of the bid opening. And construction start date, that is the first day of your first payroll, if not started within 90 days of the contract award. Because the Department of Labor updates the prevailing wage rates on Friday, please do not start any activity on a Friday, because you will automatically be out of compliance. Those activities include the bid advertisement, the bid opening, contract award, and the construction start date. As I previously stated, you must obtain the prevailing wage rates from the Labor Standards Officer. The email is ceo.lso@illinois.gov. The wage rate determination request is available on DCEO's website, and that is listed on your screen. So I'll cover a little bit of how to complete the wage rate determination request form. So on the left-hand side of the screen is a very small picture of what it looks like, and you will complete the general information, the type of project, a description of work, and please give me a complete description of work so that I can give you the best information available. The classifications of work. Public infrastructure is typically heavy highway, and the crafts needed to complete the project. Please be thorough. And then you need to complete your estimated project timeline. So the next few slides are just a closer look at that wage rate determination request form. So this is the first part, general information. So please complete all of the information at the top. If you send in a revised request, please make sure that you change the date that you are submitting the request. If it was initially submitted in February and you are updating your request in April, please change your date. Okay, so the type of project. Indicate the type of project and include a complete description of the work being performed. So if you're rehabilitating a water tower, please let me know what type of work is being performed. Is there metal work involved? Are you painting the water tower? Please be as descriptive as possible. So classifications. Do you need a heavy highway wage rate determination, or do you need the building wage rate determination? So public infrastructure projects, water, sewer main, are heavy highway. Classification of work for a building would include water and sewage treatment plants or warehouses. If you are working on a project that contains both building and heavy highway categories, use the category that would fit 80% of the cost of construction. So selecting the crafts needed. Please select the crafts anticipated to work on the projects. Are you working on water lines or connections? If you are, you need to select the plumber craft. Not selecting the plumber craft does not get you out of doing a conformance request, because we all know that plumbers are not included in the heavy highway wage rate determinations. So if you don't choose the plumber craft for your water main project, I will, and I will still send you the conformance documentation. Okay, so this section is pretty cut and dry. Provide the timeline dates that you are aware of and update those dates with each request, and provide the contact information for the person responsible for the contract documents. I need to know who to send the information to. Wage rate determinations are processed via email. Only one wage rate determination will be issued per project. Your classification is not listed. The conformance process must be used. Do not pull an alternate wage rate determination because it contains the classification you need. Again, we all know that the plumber wage rate is not listed in the heavy highway category, but it is in the building category. We cannot use it. We must use the conformance process. An additional classification may be requested only when the work to be performed by the classification is not performed by a classification within the wage rate determination. The classification is utilized in the area by the construction industry, and the proposed wage rate, including the fringe, bears a reasonable relationship to the wage rates contained within the wage rate determination. Okay, I'll cover the wage rate conformance process. Documents will be sent to the grant administrator by the Labor Standards Officer with the lock-in wage rate determination. Those documents include the HUD 4230A or request for additional classification and a sample letter of request for the contractor. After contract award, the contractor completes appropriate sections of the HUD 4230A form and prepares a letter of request. The grant administrator will submit those documents to the Labor Standards Officer. So the Labor Standards Officer reviews the conformance request and forwards it to the Department of Labor for approval. The Department of Labor reviews conformance requests within 30 to 45 days. The contractor should then pay the subject worker the proposed rates on the request. If the request is denied, wage restitution could result. So HUD 4230A, request for conformance or additional classification. The contractor completes the sections that are relative to the proposed wage and fringe. The name and address of the contractor must indicate that he or she agrees, and the name of a subcontractor if applicable. With that request must also be a letter of request from the contractor on contractor letterhead. It must indicate the grant number, the grantee name, the project location, including the city and county. It must indicate the additional classifications needed and the current or proposed wage and fringe. Please note that conformance requests are not needed for bona fide apprentices, trainees, or welders unless the project is 100% welding. So now I'll cover some frequently asked questions. What is the site of the work? The physical place or places where the building of or work called for in the contract will remain once the contracted work has been completed, and any other site where a significant portion of the building or work is constructed, provided that such site is established specifically for the performance of the contract or project. 2 questions to ask yourself. Was it constructed specifically for the completion of the project? and will it remain once the project is completed? What is not a site of the work? A branch establishment, fabrication plants, tool yards of a contractor or subcontractor whose location and continuance in operation are determined wholly without regard to a particular federal or federally assisted contract or project, and commercial or material supplier fabrication plants, batch plants, borrow pits, job headquarters, tool yards, etc., established by suppliers for the project before opening of bids, but not on the site of work. Under what circumstances are truck drivers covered under Davis-Bacon related acts? Drivers of a contractor or subcontractor for time spent working on the site of the work. Drivers of a contractor or subcontractor for time spent loading and unloading materials and supplies on the site of the work, if such time is not de minimis. This means if more than half of the time spent is on the site of the work. If they continue to load and unload throughout the day and you've noticed that they're spending more than half of their day there, then they are subject to Davis-Bacon. Truck drivers transporting materials or supplies between a facility that is deemed part of the site of the work and the actual construction site, and truck drivers transporting portions of the building or work between a site established specifically for the performance of the contract or project, where a significant portion of such building or work is constructed and the physical places where the building or work called for in the contract will remain. Under what circumstances are truck drivers not covered under Davis-Bacon and related acts? Material delivery truck drivers while off the site of work. Drivers of a contractor or subcontractor traveling between a Davis-Bacon job and a commercial supply facility while they are off the site of work, and truck drivers whose time spent on the site of the work is de minimis, such as only a few minutes at a time, merely to pick up or drop off materials or supplies. Now keep in mind, again, if the truck driver is on site several times throughout the day, 10, 15 times, 10, 15 minutes at a time, which results in more than half of their workday being on site, that time is not de minimis, and Davis-Bacon will apply in that case. I have listed the website for the Contractor's Guide to Prevailing Wage Requirements for Federally Assisted Construction Projects, and where you can obtain the Federal Labor Standards provisions. If you have any trouble with the websites, please contact me. Davis-Bacon and applicability to economic development projects. Davis-Bacon applies to all construction activities using CDBG funds, whether it is on public or private property, infrastructure improvements for the benefit of a business, or direct capital investments to a business, for building improvements, installation and purchase of equipment, construction cost, and lease improvements. All of these are subject to Davis-Bacon. Let's go back to the very beginning. Any contract over $2,000 is subject to federal labor standards, Davis-Bacon and related acts. If you are working on a CDBG economic development project, Davis-Bacon and related acts applies. I'm going to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, the Employment of Illinois Workers on Public Works Act, the Preference Act. It is applicable to any public works project financed in whole or in part by federal funds administered by the state of Illinois. The entity must employ at least 90% of Illinois laborers on such projects during periods of excessive unemployment in Illinois. However, the Preference Act also states that in all contracts involving the expenditure of federal aid funds in relation to a public works project or improvement, this act shall not be enforced in such a manner as to conflict with any federal statutes or rules and regulations. What does this mean for you? We need you to follow 2 CFR 200 procurement methods as required for CDBG funded construction projects. We also need you to submit a copy of the bid tabulation with the notification of contract award to your grant manager and the labor standards officer. We also need you to forward any IDOL violation notices to your grant manager immediately upon receipt. If the grantee receives a violation notice, DCEO will work with the Illinois Department of Labor on your behalf using 2 CFR 200 as the justification for the non-applicability of the Preference Act to this CDBG funded project, but you must have followed 2 CFR 200 and selected the lowest responsible bidder. Well, good news. For those of you who are still awake, we survived. For those of you who have fallen asleep, you can wake up now because we're finished. Thank you.